Girl, boy, man, woman, cisgender, transgender, queer, intergender, non-queer, man,
gender
non-binary,
transgender,
unicorn. With so many gender identities and terms,
¿Puedes hablar al micrófono?
Aló, aló. Hola. Aló, hola. Hola, hola. ¿Se pone ahí?
¿Sí?
Ya. Súper.
No me responden.
Porque esto no sé si funcionan bien. ¿Podría ocupar esto también?
Sí, como tú quieras.
Me da igual. O sea, así estoy con las manos libres nomás.
A ver, me están respondiendo.
Hola, hola, hola. Aló, aló. Aló, aló. Ah, lo que te quería pedir era si es un vasito de agua. ¿Ya?
Hello, everyone. How are you today? Thank you, Grego, for answering. All right, so welcome to our last seminar this semester. Come on. All right. Our guest today is a cis male. He's 32 years old. He was born in Independencia and he also lives there. He's a teacher of English and a master's in linguistics from USACH. He's gay, activist, and advocate of human rights and LGBT plus rights. He's also atheist, a feminist, and a center-left supporter. He's interested in education, LGBT plus entertainment and culture, feminism, and social movements in general. He believes we're all responsible to make a change in the world, and in order to achieve that, we need to work together. Please welcome Alonso Poblete.
Well, or not? Is that okay? Yes? Good? Thank you. So thank you very much for this invitation. I'm really honored to be presenting today in front of this vast audience. When I was invited to this presentation, I freaked out a little bit, to be honest, because I thought 30 minutes and talking about gender, like the feminist movement, gender roles, inequality, payment gap. You know, there's so many things that you can say, and in 30 minutes, of course, you're not going to say much, right? But then I decided I was going to talk about gender and lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people here in Chile. So the purpose of this presentation today is to raise awareness in this short speech. So again, I'm very thankful and honored to be here. So thank you for your attendance. And thank you for listening to the message I have to deliver to you. Well, Alonso Poblete, an activist from Fundación Iguales and a teacher of English. And I decided to divide this presentation in two things. One is going to be the content, that is going to be gender. So what gender is, what's the difference between sex, gender, and sexual orientation, what gender expression is going to be the current situation that lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people face or have here in Chile. What can we do to help the LGBT people feel safe, and what's going on here in Chile? Another big decision I had to make for this presentation was whether I was going to take an academic perspective, and if I was going to cite a lot of like academic articles, or if I was going to talk about Judith Butler or big names, you know, in the academia, or if I was going to take like a more activist or like everyday approach and let, you know, like real people, just like you and me, make the speech. So I decided to do that. So half of my presentation is going to be me talking, and another half is going to be them talking. So let's start with an ad as an example. This is Magnum, an ice cream ad campaign called Be True to Your Pleasure. And in this one, trans and gender non-conforming people participated, and they talked about their testimonies. So let's watch the testimonies of James and Gregory's testimonies.
I was just born this way. This is just who I am. I've always been like this. I know I look like a woman, but I sound like a man. I've always wanted to be somewhere in the middle. I've always wanted to have both energies, masculine and feminine. So I thought I shouldn't just have one. I didn't like the world as it was, so I created my own.
When the sun shines, we shine together.
And now Gregory's.
My mom made me into this world. She taught me about not coloring inside the lines. She empowered me to be whatever the hell I wanted to be. I don't see things black and white. I see things on a spectrum. I see beauty in many different forms. If we're talking about gender, I don't see man and woman. I see different degrees of male and female, and I know I fall somewhere maybe a little left of the middle. I think, depends on the day. We are made of water, our bodies are fluid, and I kind of just go with the flow.
Did you know about this campaign? Is this something you're familiar with? No? So, do you know these people? Do you know the concept gender fluid? Do you know them? No? Well, maybe this is something new to you, or maybe you're an expert about this, or maybe you know even more than I do. But we're going to discuss now about this concept, what gender is. So, The Advocate, a YouTube channel, created a series of educational videos called Queered 101. In here, Jesse is going to explain the difference between sex and gender. So, again, watch this video.
Girl, boy, man, woman, cisgender, transgender, queer, intergender, non-queer, man, gender, unicorn. With so many gender identities and terms being used, gender can be confusing to anyone. So what is gender? There are three categories to this conversation: biological sex, gender identity, and sexual orientation. Most people confuse biological sex with gender. Biological sex refers to biological traits that are usually determined by chromosomes. Most people are born male or female, with some people being born intersex. Someone is intersex when they're born without the typical XX or XY chromosomes. For example, a person may be born appearing female, but may actually have a male anatomy on the inside. Or a person may be born with genitals that appear between male or female. So biological sex, which determines if someone was born male, female, or intersex, is determined right at birth. Gender identity, however, is different. Gender is a social construct. That's right, a social construct, used to characterize traits within a person. People have put these arbitrary ideas of gender onto virtually everything, from genitals, types of clothing, career paths, and even colors. In today's society, tuxedos, penises, the color blue, and a love of football are considered masculine gender markers, while breasts, the color pink, dresses, and a love of Barbies are considered female gender markers. Many see gender as real, determined at birth, or a binary split between masculine and feminine. Yet these gender markers are not determined by your biological sex. They are ideas that we tend to assign a person based on sex. However, put simply, gender is how you see yourself. Biological males are given the masculine gender of boy, and biological females are given the feminine gender of girl. This is known as assigned male at birth or assigned female at birth. Many people feel perfectly comfortable with their assigned gender based on biological sex. These people are considered cisgendered. If you are a cis male or a cis female, your gender identity matches your biological sex. But for some people, their assigned gender identity doesn't feel right. So when a person's biological sex does not line up with their gender identity, they're considered transgender. Many trans people feel uncomfortable with their genitals, feeling that it doesn't wholly represent their gender identity. On the flip side though, many transgender people do feel comfortable with their genitals, but are not comfortable with other aspects of their gender identity. So while genitals can be a part of a transgender person's gender identity, they don't have to be a major factor or even a factor at all. Outside of genitals, feeling transgender can just be a general uncomfortability with being treated as one gender when you feel like the other. A trans person who is assigned male at birth but identifies as a woman is considered a trans woman. A person who is assigned woman at birth but identifies as a man is considered a trans man. Remember, biological sex is different than gender identity, which is how you identify in your head and in your heart. The third component is sexual orientation. Sexual orientation is itself an entire spectrum of identities. Sexual orientation itself is also not determined by biological sex or gender identity. So sexual orientation is who you want to date, and gender identity is how you see yourself. For example, a trans woman who finds only men attractive is considered straight, even though she's trans. So to recap, biological sex is determined by your chromosomes, male, female, or intersex. Gender identity is how you identify on a spectrum between masculine and feminine. And sexual orientation is how your gender identity relates to the gender identity or identities that you find attractive. However, not all people identify as the binary identities of boy and girl, but somewhere in between the two. So gender isn't two locked boxes that we find ourselves in. Gender is actually a spectrum that we all can move along, or not identify with at all. But that's a topic for the next video. The bottom line, while sex is determined at birth, gender identity is self-generated. So respect everyone's self-identification.
Okay, what do you think about that? Did you know about this? Did you know all this terminology? Was the video difficult to understand? Well, I want to reiterate something from here. Gender is a social construct, which means that it's culturally specific. Gender is not static, it's dynamic, so it can change, and it changes actually over time. And one other thing that Jesse didn't mention is that gender is a performance. So we act and we do gender. There's a performativity in gender with everything we do. So let's watch now another video by the same series, the next one, that is gender expression. So what is gender expression? Yes? So let's watch, pay attention.
Gender do you think I am? Am I a boy or a girl? Many times people assume someone's gender based on how they talk, what up bro, what they wear, or what they're interested in. But all that is gender expression. So what is gender expression? To refresh, your biological sex, if you're male, female, or intersex, is determined by chromosomes. Gender identity, however, is how you identify as a boy or a girl within the social construct of gender. How you communicate your gender is known as gender expression. We give gender connotations to absolutely everything, from clothing to jobs to interests. When a person's expression of themselves matches what society says they should be expressing through their gender, they're considered gender conforming. A stereotypical example of this is when a girl wears a dress or a guy plays basketball. I like basketball. Yes, yes you do. And because you're a boy, you're considered gender conforming. But I also like basketball. So you're gender conforming too then. My gender is a girl, so me liking basketball is considered not gender conforming. When someone breaks the rules and expresses themselves outside of the societal gender norms, they're considered gender non-conforming. Being gender conforming or gender non-conforming is an action, not a form of self-identification. What that means is anyone can be gender conforming or non-conforming. Transgender, cisgender, whoever. Our idea of what gender conforming is has changed over time. Girls wearing pants was considered gender non-conforming. But today, girls wear pants all the time, so it's considered gender conforming. Gender traits aren't static or intrinsic to a certain gender. They change all the time. And remember, gender identity and gender expression are different. For example, Susie, she has XX chromosomes, so her biological sex is female. Her self-identified gender identity is girl, which makes her cisgendered. Cisgendered means that a person's gender identity matches the gender that they were assigned at birth. However, she sees herself as a tomboy. That means her gender expression is more masculine, which makes her gender non-conforming in some aspects. Susie shows us that biological sex, gender identity, and gender expression are all related but separate aspects. I like both superheroes and princesses. Wait, you like princesses? Princesses are literally the most badass people ever. But how can a person express both masculine and feminine traits at the same time? Perhaps I can help. Instead of just boy or girl, gender is actually a spectrum between masculine and feminine. Some people may identify as completely masculine or completely feminine, but many people identify as varying levels of both and identify somewhere on the spectrum. So someone may want to express themselves as mostly feminine, but still have some masculine traits as well. Someone who doesn't completely identify as boy or girl, but somewhere on the spectrum is considered non-binary. As gender expression and gender identity are two separate things, they each have their own spectrum. For example, someone can have a non-binary gender expression, but a completely feminine gender identity, like a tomboy. Someone can also have a non-binary gender identity, but a completely masculine gender expression. Gender can be fun. You get to explore your gender identity through your gender expression every day. There are no rules. Dang, that's a lot to remember. Yeah, even I don't get all that. At the end of the day, it's all about you. Just be who you want to be and let others be who they want to be. As long as we respect everyone and respect how they identify and express themselves, that's what's really important. Now wait!
That's the video. Good. So, well, now with this explanation, things are a bit more clearer, aren't they? Yes? What do you think about your own gender expression? How do you dress? How do you move? How do you talk? What are the things you like, your interests? Well, it's pronounced metrosexual.com created this visual representation called the genderbread person, where you have gender identity, who you are in your mind and in your heart. A gender expression, yes, so how you talk, how you dress, your interest, biological sex, your chromosomes, hormones, genitals, and your sexual orientation, who you are sexually and romantically attracted to, are there represented as spectrums. Two things from 0 to maybe one side of the spectrum, or maybe both. So what's going on here in Chile? In Chile, we have many iconic figures defying and challenging the stereotypical gender roles and the cis heteronormativity. We have, for example, in the media, Dimondo. We have Elenia Melan, the trans model. We have the feminist movement, you know, fighting against sexism and violence against women and inequality. We have Daniela Vega, the first trans woman presenting at the Oscars and who won an Academy Award because of the movie Fantastic Woman. We have The Switch, this reality TV show that brought drag culture into mainstream Chilean TV. You know, like your mothers, your fathers watching, you know, drag people on TV, amazing. Arlena Aliaga, the first trans woman at Liceo 1 studying there. Then Fernanda Muñoz, a trans contestant participating in MasterChef. We have Emilia Schneider, the first trans president, you know, of the Student Federation of your university. And we have Netflix. I don't know if you like Netflix, but I love it because you have so many streaming media content on your mobile phone, your mobile devices at home, you know, LGBT-friendly content, films, documentaries, series, etc. On legal terms here in Chile, now we have the gender identity law. Chile now recognizes the trans identities, and on December 10th, last year, this law was published in the official newspaper. So now there is more regulation and it's easy, or not easy, but now trans people can actually have their legal name and gender recognized by the states. If you want to know more information, by the way, go to iguales.cl and visit our website. Amaranta School is a school that is supposed to believe, or that is believed to be, the first school predominantly for transgender children and their siblings. And this one opened in Chile, in Ñuñoa. Did you know this? Well, it's named after the Mexican transgender politician Amaranta Gómez Regalado, and it caters for children's ages between 6 and 17. So we're going to watch a report that the BBC News interviewed the school children and also the school staff. So let's watch what they have to say.
For me, it's just like a normal thing. It's just being myself.
Ser trans, en una pequeña frase sería ser libre.
This is Amaranta School. It's believed to be the world's first school created for transgender children.
Gender is not so static like we think, like you are a boy or a girl. I think the kids go one to another. They are more free than us. I think we as a parent or grown-up people, we want to tell you where you are. A kid, you are a kid, right? But boy or girl, tell me. Sometimes the children doesn't know. They just want to play, they just want to grow up, they just want to be happy.
28 pupils in Amaranta. 22 to 23 identify as trans. The remainder identify as cis. And they are generally the friends and family of the transgender kids. Hi! Amaranta School is in a compact building. There are 2 classrooms, one for pupils aged 12 and up, and a junior class for the younger ones. Many of the pupils have joined after falling out of the education system once they began to transition. Matteo is 17 and joined Amaranta last year, having previously been at a girls-only school. What was the girls' school like?
I mean, it wasn't bad. I've been, like, until last year I was there. And I came out and they took it really well, but they couldn't help me the way I needed to. So I decided to leave school, and I was like this the whole year without school. You know who you are. And for me, when I started growing up and my family started pushing feminine things to me, like wear dresses, and like long hair, makeup and stuff, and I started feeling like I am not this.
They've done a number of these studies on transgender children. And in those studies, they say that a lot of the time, the majority of the time, gender identity of what children feel in pre-puberty or during puberty might not be what they feel in 10, 20 years' time.
Well, we don't really care about that here at school. Here at school, the kids are who they want to be now.
Okay. And if you write your name at the bottom somewhere, what do you think it means to be a trans child? What does transgender mean to you as a word?
Ser trans es como cuando eres trans puedes ser más libre.
For me, it's just like a normal thing. It's just being myself.
Es ser tú mismo y confiar siempre en ti. Si tú quieres ser trans, puedes porque es tu cuerpo.
What was the reason for studying at home?
No me sentía cómoda en mi colegio. No me sentía cómoda en mi colegio porque estaba muy invisibilizado lo trans. Nadie hablaba de lo trans. En el otro colegio, como que no había respeto tanto como en profesores o alumnos.
So, lastly, if you could use one sentence to describe yourself right now, like how you feel right now, what would you say?
Una persona valiente.
Soy inquieta. Me gusta jugar.
Una persona risueña también y curiosa también.
Ser siempre divina.
Yes, what do you think about that? Did you know about that? No? Okay. Well,
transgender people are being barred from joining the United States military.
That's another thing.
But what's led to this, and what does it mean?
Yes. Okay. So apparently, things are looking up, right? And apparently, you know, things for the LGBT community is great, and we're making lots of progress, and we are in a very good place. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans people face discrimination on a daily basis just because of who we are. According to an annual report of human rights published by Mobile, 44% of homophobia and transphobia cases increased 44% last year. Yes, 2018. The year that the gender identity law was published in the official newspaper. This year, according to 24horas.cl, there's a transphobic and homophobic attack every 6 days. And the increase means, this increase is 53%. These last 17 years, according to this graph, you can see that the attacks of discrimination have been on the rise, and especially alarming in the last 3 and 4 years. Transphobia kills. And I don't know if you're aware of this, but in Chile and in the world, the trans community is targeted in most of the offenses and crimes. And probably that has to do because they are more vulnerable because of their gender expression and because they're an easy target. Did you know this? That recently a trans student killed himself in Copiapó. In Santiago and Valparaíso hold most of the offenses and crimes against LGBT people. And trans people have 39% of offenses and crimes, even more than the LGBT people together. Why is that? Well, probably because of visibility. And because some people, I would say traditional areas from the community are not happy with this progress. According to Todo Mejora National Survey of School Climate that was published, or that was carried out, in 2016, lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans students' experiences of violence and insecurity say that they experience high levels of violence at their school. 70% feel unsafe due to their sexual orientation. Almost 95% have heard LGBT-phobic comments at the school, and almost 60% have heard them by the school staff, so the adults, not the children. Almost 2/3 was verbally harassed, 1 out of 10 was beaten, and almost 1/3 was cyberbullied. For trans people, this is not any better. Trans people need more visibility. With more visibility comes more understanding. And these statistics are taken from transstudent.org, a US organization, but probably these statistics are very similar here in Chile. These statistics can and will get better. As more trans people are visible, more understanding, for them, and more inclusion. 80% of trans students felt unsafe at school because of their gender expression. Almost 59% of gender non-conforming students experienced verbal harassment in the past year because of the gender expression, compared to 29% of the peers. 49% of trans people reported physical abuse. 41% of trans people have attempted suicide. 50% of trans people have been raped or assaulted by a romantic partner. 30% of trans women have been incarcerated. And trans women have 1 in 12 chance of being murdered, or 1 in 8 chance for a trans woman of color. So, as you can see, there's a lot to do. What can we do to improve these unhappy numbers? What can we do to help the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans community feel safe? Well, discrimination is something we learn. Therefore, it's something we need to unlearn. Here I have some suggestions for you. Why don't you learn, do research, listen, and watch more LGBT-friendly content and material? That's going to make us happy, and of course that's going to make you happy too. Because you're going to see other ways of doing gender, of being yourself, and being actually who you are. People tell you all the time, you can be whatever you want, but it's not really true. If you know someone who's LGBT, talk to them, ask your questions. They're going to be happy to help you. Why don't you visit websites from different LGBT organizations from Chile and the world? There you have 3 Chilean organizations that work with trans people and community. Why don't you Google them and learn what they do? Another thing you can do is read scholarly articles. So if you don't know where to start, you can go to our website, www.iguales.cl, And you can go to Bibliwelles. There you have like a list of different topics, like for example, well-being and mental health, sexual diversity, discrimination, feminism, sex parenting, etc. Have a look, they're very interesting. Also, you can listen to podcasts. Something that I love about the internet today is that it gives you access to lots of material and contents. And it's also very easy to broadcast, which means that many people are creating different material and content. And you can have access from different places of the world. So why don't you listen to a gay and a non-gay and LGBTQ plus friendly podcast, the #1 in the UK, they say. Or why don't you listen to Science Versus? That this podcast compares facts against fads. And this episode, The Science of Being Transgender, they answer questions such as what makes us the gender that we are, or what should we do if your kid doesn't fit the mold? They interview, for example, endocrinologists and psychologists, and it's a very, very interesting podcast to listen to. Another thing you can do is to watch YouTube videos and documentaries. There are tons of YouTubers creating material, educational material, that is fun and entertaining. Why don't you give a try to those things? National Geographic created this documentary, A Gender Revolution, A Journey with Katie Couric. It's amazing. It will blow your mind. And finally, the most important thing you can do is to be an ally. Be there. The article #1 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. But today, that is not true. We do not have and entertain the same rights and possibilities and opportunities of being who we really are. So why don't we say no and stop homophobia, transphobia, and biphobia, and help us create a world where everybody is included and part of? Thank you.
Is there any question for Alonso? Questions, comments?
Do you have any question, comments, or a testimony, a story?
Hello, thank you very much for coming today. I have a question. In an interaction, one-to-one, one-on-one, whatever, what do you suggest for us to communicate or interact with a trans person? Because personally, I don't have any experience, and I haven't interacted with any trans in my life, but if I imagine a situation where I do, I wouldn't know what to do. And asking directly, hey, what's to be a trans, will be very unrespectful. So what do you suggest?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I think, first of all, many things, I would say maybe put yourself in the other person's shoes. So for example, are you asking your friends, hey, what kind of genitals do you have? Hey, what was your name before you transition? Hey, I don't know, but what is it to be straight? What is it to be cisgender? You don't make those questions, right? So probably it's just being who you are with everybody. And if you really trust this person and the conversation races, and comes up naturally, then you can ask. And if you made a mistake, for example, with their pronouns, saying he, for a trans woman, for example, just say sorry and move on. Probably has to do with how close you are to this person. And of course, the person, if trusts in you, is going to tell these experiences without even asking. That's my suggestion. Do you have any other question?
I have a question, but it's about Fundación Iguales. I'm not sure what they do, and if you can explain something for us.
Well, you can visit us the website. Do you remember the website, right? Iguales.cl. Well, basically what we do is something, I don't know how to say in English, incidencia política, which means that we actually move political changes, and we lobby. We also give these, for example, speeches, we make presentations, we participate in different discussions, forums. If they ask people from the foundation to participate in different committees, they have experts and they would participate. So basically this is what the organization of the foundation does here in Chile. Do you have any other question? There's one here, or there.
Thanks for the speech. And the question is about what is the difference between LGBT, LGBTQI, and LGBT+.
Oh, that's a very interesting question. I believe that we should not make us into a box because we're people. So when I say I'm gay, immediately you say, oh, he's gay, so this, and this. Or you say, oh, this person is trans. Oh, so this, and this. And we're people. So the thing is, it's kind of one side of the coin and the other. As we saw in the infographics, trans visibility is necessary for understanding. But because of more trans visibility, also comes more violence from the very, I would say, conservative or angry people that don't understand these changes, or they don't want changes to happen. So the thing with the categories or the letters is different ways to identify. But at the same time, these are different labels. So I don't know if you remember the first video with, no, not the first video, well, the first video of Queer 101, what gender is. You have many ways to identify. For example, in Canada, you have an expression called two spirits that comes from the indigenous people of Canada to say people that are non-binary, which means that they don't consider to be a man or a woman. But you have many ways of categorizing. So I would say that, for example, Iguales uses the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and trans. But then you discover, or then you learn also that intersex people also exist. The A, for example, is agender, so a person without a gender. The Q is queer or questioning. So there are many different labels. But what is, I think is important is to remember that we are people. And creating these labels is to say we exist. We're not invisible. I don't know if I answered your question. Yes? Good.
One last question, if there's any. All right. Thank you, Alonso. Thank you very much for coming today. Yes, and can you please show us your questions?
Oh, yes. So I brought two questions for you to answer, and there you are. So one is, what is the difference between sex and gender? And how does society contribute to the understanding of these notions? And the second question is, what can you do to stop violence against LGBT people in your university? And provide at least two strategies.